Howdy, fellow Vine Trippers. I wanted to take just a moment before the show starts to let you know about a great website called Texas Wine Lover. They can be found at txwinelover.com. And they have a comprehensive website that can become your go-to site for information on Texas wines, winemakers, and the wineries that can be found in this state. They even have a phone app that you can download, and that will help you plan your route to create your own wine trip. So make sure and check them out at txwinelover.com. Welcome to Texas Under Vine, an exploratory podcast to scout out the best that Texas wine country has to offer. I'm your wine guide, Scott, and I'm here to lead you on an auditory expedition to the vineyards and wineries across the great Lone Star State. Each episode will cover a different vineyard, winery, or wine-related business operating in Texas. You'll hear interviews, descriptions, and details about each location that will excite you to visit and experience them for yourself. Ready to plan a wine tour? Use these episodes to choose the most interesting spots for you and your friends to check out. Most of all, enjoy hearing about the rapidly growing wine industry in the state and what makes our wines and wineries the best. Howdy, fellow Vine Tripper. Welcome to episode 6 for Texas Under Vine. Today, we're headed to a lovely little tasting room right off the highway in the heart of Johson City. This particular tasting room is called Pebble Cellars. So one of the things about Pebble Rock you'll find is that it literally is right off the highway in downtown Johson City. It's very easy to find. It's not back off in the boonies of the wine road or anything like that. It's literally right downtown in Johson City. Very convenient to get to. It's a quaint little tasting room. It feels more like you're enjoying wine in the living room of a house. It's nothing big and fancy yet. I know that Robert and Lydia, who own Pebble Rock Cellars, have dreams to expand and to do some other things. This is kind of their beginnings, and you'll hear more about that in a little bit. But so right now, they just have a small little space. It's to have a place for people to be able to experience their wines and taste things, and for them to do some education about their wines without being a big, crowded, full tasting room full of a bunch of people. So it's definitely not for larger groups, but it is a very intimate tasting experience. And you do get to do those tastings with either Robert or Lydia as they guide you through it. It is an educational experience. They're very big on wanting to explain to you things about wine, to learn about wine. There's so many different things that go into wine, and they want to do these different little educational experiences. I think he mentions in the interview they do a different one each quarter with a different theme. While I was there, they talked about sight and how light and things like that affect the wine as we see it. So not only are you doing a tasting, getting to taste these different wines, you're learning about all these different cool aspects of wine as you go through your tasting. And so they have these different series that they do as they go through. They also recommend strongly that you make reservations. And part of that's because, again, one of them is going to be there with you, Robert or Lydia. And so they need to know ahead of time for their schedule to be able to be there. Their tastings are done only on the weekends. If you're going to do a tasting during the week, you have to have a reservation because they have to be able to plan through that. But they're open on Saturdays and Sundays for these tastings. And part of the reason that is because during the week, they also have another business. It's a consulting business called Vine To Vino. As part of this consulting business, they provide all kinds of help to up-and-coming vineyards, tasting rooms, things like that. Lydia does the consultation on all the aspects of the vineyard, the viticulture, what needs to be done with space, with the types of vines, all kinds of things that she can help provide consultation for. And Robert spends a lot of his time consulting on the actual winemaking aspects. So getting in and taking the grapes and making them into the lovely beverages that we all enjoy. okay? And so they have this consulting company. I've actually spoken to a couple of wineries already just in this podcast journey who have utilized Vine To Vino and their services to help them get their tasting rooms and their wineries and vineyards in order. So not only do they have their own tasting room, which we're going to hear about today, called Pebble Cellars, but they also have this consulting business where they're helping lots of other wine businesses in Texas provide these incredible winemaking experiences and wine tasting experiences to us, the consumers who get to come and enjoy it. Like I said, they're only open mainly on Saturdays and Sundays. It gives them time to focus on their consulting operations during the week. So if you come in and you make a reservation on a Saturday or Sunday and you come to this quaint little house and go in, again, one of them will be there to do this tasting with you and to do their educational experience as part of that. The story of their winery name is really funny. We're going to go through that. And Robert tells a story about he has to kind of dig his feet in about things, but ended up giving in after all. And so you'll find out about Pebble Rock. And as part of that, they actually have these cool rocks that they show you during the tasting. They go into the name and where it came from and all that. So they're giving some history and some stuff like that. It's a really fun experience, a very personal experience for that tasting room. So I sat down, I made a tasting reservation. I was able to meet Robert and taste some of their wines, explore their current series, like I said, that they were doing about light. And afterwards, I was able to sit down and ask him some questions and pick his brain a little bit. So let's hear a little bit about what Robert had to say about Pebble Cellars. And then you can hear straight from him about the things that they're doing there. I'm here with Robert, Pebble Cellars. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you into the wine industry?
It was really just kind of wine really found me. It was my senior year at A&M. I'd just come back from a work abroad down in Chile. Not really wanting to know what I wanted to do with horticulture. And talked to some professors and stuff like that. Essentially boiled down to I did what any college kid does when they don't want to prolong real life from happening. So I kind of, let's keep going to school. So I talked to the graduate professor at the Hort department, and he basically told me, well, you need to find kind of like what you're interested in, go look at other universities, see what that professor, find the professor that's studying something like that, and apply. And I went, that was a worthless meeting because I don't know what I want to do. But essentially, A&M also had a wine tasting class at that time that I was a part of. And I had seen, when I come back from Chile, I'd seen a internship position on the student bulletin board for a winery out here in the Hill Country. So I was thinking of that, and those pieces just kind of fell together. After that meeting with the professor as well, I was like, well, wine kind of seems like it's cropping up in my life. So let's Google wine degrees. And it's like, cool, I can get a master's in this. And, found two programs that really interested me. One was Fresno State, and then the other one was Euromaster Vinifera. So it was a European program. So applied to the European one, got accepted into that in the spring of my senior year. But as that was going on, Christmas was coming around, and I was like, let me call that winery and see if they still want an intern. Gave them a call. Came out, interviewed, and they hired me and worked all Christmas break and just fell in love with it. Came down every weekend unless I had an exam, and then worked all summer out there. So at that point, by the time I graduated from A&M, I knew that I wanted to be in the wine industry. And if that hadn't got accepted into that master's program, I would have just kept plugging along as this little cellar rat.
So tell me about this location's history. How'd you get it started?
So we were looking for a home for like a home tasting room for ourselves. We had already released our wines. We were doing pop-up tastings. We quickly realized that we needed a physical tasting room. We live here in Johson City, so we wanted to be part of the community as well. So just looking for things. And then Lydia just drove by because this used to be a yoga studio beforehand. And then she moved her location, and then Lydia drove by and just saw the for rent sign in the window, and we gave him a call, and the rest is kind of history.
So tell me about the history of the name of the location.
So Pebble Rock Cellars comes from my wife's love of penguins. And essentially when we started this brand, we're self-funding this for the most part. And we knew that we wanted to find a name that we could trademark. We had seen a couple of wineries open up and found a name, but it was already taken by another winery, and we didn't want to get that nice little cease and desist letter in the mail and have to redo all of our marketing. So we kind of really banged our head against the wall for 2 years trying to find a name. And then one day, we're driving around, and Lydia goes, I think I come up with the name, but you're going to have to listen to the whole story. And I was like, fine, okay. And she goes, well, I love penguins, right? I'm like, yes, but I've already told you. We're not doing anything with penguins with the label. As she's continuing the story, she goes, well, what do you think about Pebble Rock Cellars? I go, cool, why? Well, my favorite animal is a penguin. And I'm getting angry at this point and just wanting to leave the car as soon as possible. And I'm like, all right. And she essentially continues the story and says, well, that some species of penguins, they'll mate for life. And when they find that mate, they present them with a pebble to go start their nest. And when you propose to me, you put that engagement ring in a hide key that looks like a rock. So you put my pebble in a rock. And so eventually, I was like, fine, that story's great. I can't say no to that. And then here we are a few years later.
Oh, great story. Great story. So where do you source your grapes from?
Right now, it's all from Texas. Mostly, it's all from the High Plains. We work with Nara, Pepperjack, Crooked Posts. We've worked with Threshold Vineyards down in Navasota, and we work with Jones Family Vineyards, kind of in the Magnolia area as well.
Where do you process your grapes and create your wine?
So early on for our first vintage, I used my connections at William Chris to work around their schedule and would come in and use their equipment. So me and my wife also have a consulting company called Vine To Vino Consulting. So Lydia focuses on vineyard consulting. I focus on winemaking consulting. And one of her clients in Wimberley decided to start making wine, and they brought me on board, and I worked a deal with them where I can do all my fermentation work out at their location out in Wimberley. So we do all of our fermentation work there, and now we have a bay in Stonewall at the Miracle Mile location where we age all of our reds and do all of our bottling out there now.
So what are your favorite wines that you make?
My favorite wines, like the Passion Project, is our Unincio, which is our dessert wine done in a Madeira style. So that's definitely my passion project. We started doing traditional sparkling fermentation last year in 21, and that's been fun. We just bottled the 22 one for bottle fermentation. So kind of those ones where I get to experiment now are some of my fun ones. So.
What would you say are probably your customer favorites? What are the ones that people come back and say, oh, I want that one?
So a big customer favorites are Table Red, just because of the price point. It's in a growler format. So after they buy their growler, they get to come back in and do basically a refill for $12. So that is probably one of our most guest favorites. And then on top of that, one that surprised us was the dessert wine, because when we started selling our wine, we'd been in the industry long enough to know that dessert wines are a little bit of a harder sell in the tasting room, but constantly our Unincio is one of the top 3 sellers each week.
So if I was a listener and I wanted to come in to check it out and do a tasting, what would I need to know about doing a tasting?
So we really like to do our tastings by reservation. And for us, it's really not a pretentious thing. We're in a very small location. And one of the reasons that we started Pebble Rock and what we wanted to do with it is kind of have these really intimate tastings. Because we've been in the industry long enough. We've worked in places where you feel like the cattle call, and it's not fun being in that situation behind the bar. So it's not fun for the person on the other side of the bar. And we really just wanted to reward our guests for coming out to us as well. So the reservation allows us to control the traffic, and it really allows us to have that one-on-one conversation with our guests that we want to have. So it's what people really need to know. We will take in walk-ins if space is available. And right now we're only open Saturday and Sunday. But if people are in the area Monday through Friday and give us enough notice, we'll try to work our consulting schedules around where one of us can be here for a tasting as well.
So what are the fees involved and what type of wines do they get to taste?
Yeah, so the fee is $25 for the tasting. And then we typically have 7 different wines on the menu. Currently, like right now, it's our sparkling 2 whites. We always have one of our table wines on the program, usually 2 reds, and then we finish with our dessert wine.
So what other do you offer any other types of attractions or amenities or things that people might want to come in to do or see?
Currently, not really at the moment because we're just working with such a tight space. We do have a back portion of the tasting room that we're about to hopefully get finished in the next month or so. So our sit-down tasting will take place back there and it'll be a lot more intimate. And the front room where we currently do our tastings will become more of a lounge area so people can come in and have a glass of wine if they don't want to do the tasting again. And then phase 3 for us is on our lease, we have this big open space that's part of the lease, and eventually we'll put a nice privacy fence around it so we can do some outdoor seating. With that being said, we are one other thing that we do and offer is nice interactive educational portions with each tasting. We pick a theme for the topic for that quarter, and within those months, within that quarter, we switch the theme. So currently we're doing our site series. And so for this month, we're talking about how light affects the way that we see wine. We've got a little lamp that we put on the table, and it's got one of those nice little Hughes light bulbs that we can change the colors with. So we can kind of show you, like, one, in a professional setting, how it's important for us as winemakers for light when we're trying to judge a wine. And then we kind of always like to take it to the fun side for more, like, on our guests, like, how can they go back into the real world and see this? So we've got 2 kind of fun lights as well to kind of show them how they can see different lights or different colors of that wine in the real world. So.
Do you offer any kind of a wine club? What are the details on becoming a member and the benefits and things like that?
So we do offer a wine club. We actually just recently reopened our wine club. So we're very limited in our production. And when we started this, we knew that we needed to control the size of our wine club. So it had been on a waiting list. And the reason we do that is the wine club is kind of the bread and butter for most wineries. And we don't want to take advantage of that. We want to make sure that we're not growing that club too fast, where now we're having to sacrifice quality or something because we're not watching those numbers and it's wine club time and we don't have wine for them. So we make sure that we keep an eye on our wine club size. So we just opened it up again. And it's 2 shipments a year. We do spring and a fall. And it's choice. So about a month before the shipment, we'll send an email out to our wine club members. So like this fall shipment, we had, for the 3 bottle, it was 2 bottles of Ciangio and 1 bottle of our Tempranillo. And then for a month, they get the chance to go into their account and change it to a different allocation if they want. And then they get to, if they don't change it, they get the standard.
What about, like, if somebody can't come in to pick up their particular wine shipment, shipping, things like that?
Yeah, so we ship wine, but we do hold on to it. So if people can't come here, we don't have a time limit where they have to come and pick it up. For our wine club members as well, when it is wine club weekend, we shut down the tasting room the whole weekend so our wine club members can come and go. So that allows them a lot more flexibility and allows us to kind of use the space so it doesn't feel like a ton of people coming in at once.
It's like a big pickup party kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Do you do any kind of special events here or things like that?
We haven't. We're slowly getting into that, especially with our dessert wine. So the Unencio is always released Thanksgiving weekend, and this will be the first time that we're doing a special tasting with that. So the Friday after Thanksgiving, we're doing 2 seated tastings called the Journey of Unencio, where we'll have our youngest vintage that's still aging and taste each consecutive vintage all up to the 2018. Which is the new one to be released. So the people that are coming in and do that tasting, they get to see why we aged that wine for 4 years and get to see how that wine evolves each year in the aging process.
That's cool. Nice little vertical tasting there of all those. So, what about if people wanted to come? Are you family friendly? Over 21, under 21, pets allowed, things like that?
Family friendly. Pets are allowed if they're under control. Family friendly. We do allow kids as well. We have a bunch of young niece and nephews, so we're very aware of how that can be, and having brothers and sister-in-laws, when they do get time off, we also understand that. So we do allow kids as well.
Okay. Do you have any kind of food options for people that want to come in?
Currently, we don't, just because we don't have the space. But if people want to bring in their own food, we're not opposed against that either.
And then being a smaller space, do you have any maximum group sizes?
Yeah. So for our tasting, we max it out at 8. That way we can kind of keep it under control and keep the conversation going instead of it turning into 2 different groups.
What are your busy and slower type seasons? What's the best time for a customer to come visit?
Still being new, kind of, and freshly opened, we haven't, we're kind of getting to that point right now where we're starting to see, that momentum finally building. Like October last month was our best month ever. I would say, if you're going to be coming, just make that reservation just to guarantee that spot. Sundays are typically slower just because people are on their way home. So if you're worried about a crowd, look at Sunday.
And then do you do any distribution or anything of your wines? What's the best way? If somebody couldn't come to this location, is there any other way for them to purchase your wines or get access to them?
Really, it's the best way to do it is come to our tasting room. We have slowly been starting to get into distribution. One of the things that we wanted to do that first year that we opened was kind of just make sure we understood what the traffic flow was going to be here. Because the one thing we didn't want to do was start making relationships with other retail locations, and all of a sudden we're running out of wine and burn those bridges down. So we took that first year to kind of figure out what traffic was. Now that we know what traffic is, we're slowly reaching out. So we're in a couple places in Fredericksburg. We're in a restaurant in Austin, and we're at the Houston Wine Merchant in Houston.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So what are your plans for future growth? You mentioned a minute ago some of the outdoor stuff, but do you have other plans or things that you want to do?
So future growth, kind of slow growth. Eventually we want to find our own property, have our own winery and location out there. So kind of just slow, moderate growth.
What, in your opinion, is the number one thing that you think sets yourself apart that would want to draw people in to come visit Pebble Rock Cellars?
I would have to say it's probably the educational portion that we throw into our tastings. Because it's always different each month. So even if you've already been here before, the next time you're going to come, we're going to have a different topic that we're talking about. And the whole idea about the educational portion is, just trying to take the mystique and kind of pompousness out of wine. One, to show people kind of what I like as a winemaker, what we look at wine, and kind of give you a behind the scenes curtain of that. And then 2, just something that you could go home and easily kind of replicate or feel like you've learned something and feel a little bit smarter about wine. Tell me
one last thing that I've been curious about. So I'm seeing the logos, and you show me the different rocks and stones. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So I'm seeing on your glasses and on this, the O with the underline under that. What is that?
So that's our logo, and it goes back and kind of helps tell the story of what we want to do with Pebble Rock. What we really want to do with Pebble Rock is use this project to kind of really pay it forward, especially for our team members. So as we start to grow and gain team members, we really want to make sure we know where they want to go career-wise. Because we also understand that wine could be a blip on their map. They're not going to be with us forever. And we want to make sure that their time with us is just as valuable to them as it is to us. So with that onboard process, figure out what they want to do career-wise. So while they're with us, we can put them in positions to help them gain those skill sets, so they could get to that next part of their career. And the ones that are thinking about wanting to do their own winery, their own label, allow them to start doing that under us. So one, they can figure out if that's something they really want to do. And if they figure out really quickly that's something that they don't want to do, hopefully we send them a lot of heartache and a lot of their hard-earned money. And then the ones that really figure out that that's something they want to do, we'll start helping them sell some of that wine through our tasting room. So hopefully get some cash flow coming in. Also helps them hopefully gain a little bit of following. But on the kind of catch side is we'll take them aside and mentor them of what it is to own your own label, really on the business side, because a lot of the times in the industry, we talk about a lot of the fun stuff, but even, as winemakers and things like that, we don't talk about the business portion of owning a business. So the goal with them is when they're ready to leave, through that mentorship, we've hopefully helped them built a better business plan so they can avoid a lot of those pitfalls that, a lot of people coming in don't realize, when you're a new startup, not knowing that you're going to have to pay another $3,000 to renew a payment or something like that. That's a lot of money that a startup might not have. So trying to help them be more aware of those things. So if you look at the logo, the underline represents that rock of Pebble Rock. So the foundation we want to give to our team members. The O represents the pebble, and a pebble essentially is a smaller portion of a rock that's broken off. So it's supposed to signify how our team members are going to help influence us as a company as we continue to grow.
Well, that's part of your Vine To Vino Consulting business?
No, that's all Pebble Rock.
That's all Pebble Rock. Okay. Did you want to take a minute to talk about your Vine To Vino while we're here, or
Sure.
do you want to?
Yeah. So the reason that we're only open Monday through Friday currently is because me and my wife have our own consulting business called Vine To Vino Consulting. So Lydia focuses on vineyard consulting, and I focus on winemaking consulting, and we both kind of do the gamut of, our focus is really helping people coming into the industry, because it's a lot easier to set things up correctly. So people getting into the industry, we kind of, on our both different ways, kind of help people plan or kind of figure out if it's something they want to do. Lydia does a cost analysis for people, showing them how expensive a vineyard is going to be. And then on my end, I kind of do the same thing of helping people figure out like what size they want to be. So with my goal with them is let's figure out big picture first. Especially if you're on land, once you start building, you're landlocked and you can't build. So let's figure out how big you want to be. Let's figure out like what's going to take that kind of case size production, so we can figure out building sizes, and we can work backwards to figure out what makes more sense to start off with. So, at the end of the day, you can have a building and workflow structure that works really well, instead of something that's piecemeal. Then all of a sudden, like, you're having to work harder just because there's no flow there.
So Robert and Lydia are very much about using all of their expertise, and they have a lot, in helping others in the industry get started and succeeding along with their own venture. I've already spoken to several other wineries in the area, as I mentioned before, that have been using Vine To Vino Consulting in their own operations. But they also enjoy making the wine in their own right and are having fun experimenting with new styles. As Robert mentioned in the interview, they've just started bottling a sparkling wine using the traditional method, and I'm sure he's got more up his sleeve in this area. While I was there in my tasting, I got to taste 7 different wines, ranging from the previously mentioned sparkling wine, is a rosé, to a couple of whites, some reds, and even the dessert wine that he also mentioned in the interview. They also have a cool idea with their table red wine. That's a very popular one he mentioned. They offer it in a growler, actually. And once you finish off that growler, you can actually bring it back in and get a refill for $12. So as you can imagine, that's a pretty popular option that his customers take advantage of. As part of that educational series about light, I got to experience many different ways that light interacts with the various wines that I was tasting. Robert had this cool little lamp with an adjustable hue bulb on it to see the impact of different lighting on the different wines that I was tasting. So Robert and Lydia are dedicated not only to their craft, but to their customers as well, both in the tasting room for their own wines, as well as their consulting business to the other wineries that you enjoy and love in the 290 and Texas area. I'm really excited to see how they grow Pebble Rock Cellars itself, but also to see how many wineries are benefiting from their expertise and knowledge. It's truly a fun, intimate, and educational experience to taste wines at Pebble Rock. I came home with a beautiful bottle of Sagretino for my wine library. Check out their website at www.pebblerockcellars.wine. And their consulting website is at www.vinetovinoconsulting.com. You can also find links back and forth on their websites to get to those. There you'll find more info, again, about their wines and their story. You can easily make your reservations for doing your tasting right there on the website as well. And when you go, as always, make sure to tell them you heard about them on this podcast. Well, that brings me to the end of this episode, but never fear. More wine and wine destinations are on their way. If you're enjoying the show and know a friend who might be interested, please tell them about Texas Under Vine. Being new to the podcast game definitely makes it hard to get a listener base. So I'm depending on all of you to help me spread the word. More people need to hear about these incredible wineries and plan visits to see them and taste these fantastic wines. It's a burgeoning and incredible growing industry here in Texas, and we want to get more of the word out. Lastly, if you'd like to support the show and consider joining my Patreon and get even more behind-the-scenes content, the link can be found on the top of my website at texasundervine.com. As little as $5 can really go a long way to help me bring more content to you, and you get a bunch of fun, cool stuff as a benefit from that. Subscribe to the podcast and follow my socials to be notified of when the next episode is posted. Until next time, happy trails and bottoms up, y'all. Thanks for listening to Texas Under Vine. We strive to provide you with the best information about wine businesses all over Texas. Be sure to check out our website at texasundervine.com and follow us on our socials at Texas Under Vine to stay up on all the upcoming episodes. Please email us with any suggestions or feedback. Also, contact us if you're interested in donating, sponsoring, or advertising on the podcast, just to help us cover our expenses and bring even more great info to you in future episodes. Above all, travel safely, and most especially, drink responsibly. Don't forget to also check out the Texas Wine Lover website and their phone app. If you want to plan a trip to the wine destination I talked about in this episode, the site for Texas Wine Lover and their phone app that you can download will really help you organize a trip so you can go see them. You can check out all of the goodness that I got to experience while I was there. But as you're planning your trip, while you're on their website or their app, you can also find out things like accommodations, restaurants, and even some fun events and things that are going on at the wineries, and maybe even find one that you want to experience as part of your wine trip that you never even expected. So check them out. Again, it's txwinelover.com.